Hello and welcome to the session on learning theories of Brunner, Ausubel and GAGNE'S. Brunner's cognitive assumption. Jerome S. Brunner is one of the most ardent exponents of the cognitive development approach. He has contributed much to the technology of information processing leading to the development of the cognitive structure of an individual. He hypothesized that one's thought process evolved as a result of maturation, training and experience through a series of sequential stages. Brunner put forward the message of discovery learning and learning to learn. He believed that the process of learning through discovery is more important than the mere material learned. According to him, every learner should learn how to learn. He has suggested some strategies. Brunner opined that teachers should make use of the most wonderful gift given to human beings, namely curiosity, which is the dynamic force leading to discovery. They have to grade the curricular material to suit the developmental status of the learner. Here we should consider the stages of cognitive development enumerated by Brunner. They are enactive, iconic and symbolic representation. Enactive representation stage is characterized by the child's representation of things and events in terms of appropriate motor responses and activities. At this stage, he is unable to make use of language, images or other symbolic representations for carrying out his thought processes and acts out and represents them through non-verbal activities based on motor actions and movements. Iconic representation stage is characterized by the child's representation of things and events in terms of sensory images or mental pictures. Finally, the symbolic representation stage is that stage of one's cognitive development when thought about things and events is not necessarily dependent upon the motor activities or sensory images and mental pictures. During this stage, symbolic representation in the form of words, symbols and other imaginary abstract phenomena take the place of motor manipulation or concrete visualization. In order to ensure suitability for each stage, Brunner advocated the spiral organization of curricular material so that the same unit can be split into various greater or stages that could be mastered in terms of experiences appropriate for the developmental stages of learner. In order to ensure proper cognitive development, gradual increase in the level of abstraction of experience should be given. Freedom from bondage of response to concrete stimuli and increase in the use of verbal language were cited by him as signs of cognitive development. This should be judiciously done. Brunner has contributed his theory of learning through study of meaning and nature of a concept and its learning. Concept is the backbone of the language and science. So, the meaningful internalization of concepts was considered by him as the key to discovery learning and learning to learn. On the basis of studies, he has identified a number of strategies usually used by human beings for the purpose of concept learning and refined them even to give shape to models of teaching. In the opinion of Brunner, two main strategies are adopted for classification and concept learning. They are selection and reception. In the selection strategy, the learner himself makes the classification by forming his own judgments and by testing them. In the reception strategy, positive and negative instances are given by an expert and by studying them in terms of attributes, learners internalize the concept. However, in this also, learning is mainly the responsibility of the learner. The strategies of concept learning have been explained by Brunner in terms of two processes adopted by the learner. These are scanning and focusing. In scanning, what the learner does is forming concept hypotheses on the basis of items observed and to test these hypotheses by closer study. The scanning can be subdivided into two: simultaneous scanning and successive scanning. In the simultaneous scanning, the entire hypotheses are tested with regard to each number of the group and correct one identified. In successive scanning, one concept hypothesis is taken at a time. This is tested with respect to all the items before the second hypothesis is taken. In focusing strategy, the learner focuses his attention on the attributes of the instances or members in the group in order to identify what the group represents. The focusing can be done in two ways: gambling and conservative focusing. In focused gambling, all the attributes noticed in the first instance are tested at the same time in the case of each of the other cases. In conservative focusing, a single attribute is taken and it is tested with each item before the second attribute is taken. The process of scanning is closely related to the selection thinking strategy, while the process of gambling is more related to reception thinking strategy. The stages of development enunciated by Brunner resemble those of Piaget, but there is a major difference in the two categorizations of the stages of development, in that Brunner has not associated these stages with chronological age. On the other hand, the stages are described in terms of the nature of the experiences used by an individual to form concepts and thus build up a cognitive structure. These experiences that determine the level of the concepts formed have been graded by Brunner in the hierarchical order of abstraction. This level is taken by Brunner as an indicator of the level of intellectual development. Ausubel's theory of reception learning or meaningful verbal learning. Ausubel's theory of learning is usually known as the theory of meaningful verbal learning. Many people criticize his stress on verbal learning, when active learning, discovery learning, etc., in which the learner is constructing knowledge have gained momentum. He uses the terms verbal learning, receptive learning, expository learning, etc., and this is the basis for the criticism. But Ausubel has shown how verbal learning is advantageous if it is made meaningful. His arguments and ideas are described below. As students ascend to higher levels of education, they realize they have a lot of things to learn within a short period of time. By that time, they might have acquired a lot of information and developed a fairly rich cognitive structure. Thus, they have at their disposal an expanded enriched cognitive map. This becomes useful to them to understand and assimilate verbal knowledge meaningfully. Teachers have the responsibility of conveying large amount of information meaningfully within a time frame. This is quite possible if they perfect their skill in lucid presentation. Ausubel argues that such expository instruction, if efficiently performed, can result in meaningful reception learning. The main objection raised is that expository learning always results in meaningless rote learning, and this does not result in meaningful cognition of information. But Ausubel very emphatically points out that this is misconception arising out of the wrong belief that expository teaching inherently leads to rote learning. But it is not an inherent quality of the method. The quality of learning depends on how the exposition is made and how the learner processes the information thus received. If the learner is made to process the verbally presented information by using strategies leading to meaningful verbal learning, it will be as effective as discovery learning, especially in the case of children in higher classes. It economizes time and effort without losing effectiveness. Meaningful verbal learning. In order to understand Ausubel's ideas about meaningful verbal learning, one has to get insight into a few key concepts he used in his discussion. These are briefly described below. Cognitive structure of the learner and structure of discipline. An individual is likely to form on the basis of assimilated experiences a structure of knowledge usually designated as cognitive structure. When an individual's cognitive structure interacts with the structure of various disciplines, a matching process starts. There is hierarchy of organization in every discipline whereby broad and abstract concepts are considered to begin with. Subsidiary elemental concepts are then presented to the learner one by one in some hierarchical order based on the level of complexity, and these are built into the cognitive structure using the general concept as the foundation. A sort of pyramidal structure is formed. Every time a teacher introduces a new concept, an information processing exercise takes place. An intellectual mapping is a result. When there is a potential fit between the existing cognitive structure and the new structure of the discipline, understanding takes place, resulting in expansion and enrichment of the thinking process and the cognitive structure. Therefore, while presenting information verbally, a teacher has to employ words so skillfully that the learner will not encounter any difficulty for hooking in the new knowledge with the help of related familiar knowledge available in the existing cognitive structure. The new knowledge does not remain new anymore because it merges with the existing structure. The multidimensional perspective of a concept. This indicates that the same concept can evoke varied imageries to different persons. These may not be contradictory. Each one has a distinctive point of view because each individual has a structure of thinking. Let us take the concept of schooling. We all are aware that schools are formal institutions of learning. How would a parent view schooling? A parent might say, school is an institution meant for providing adequate knowledge and information that would enable a student to secure an appropriate slot in society, ensuring a decent, comfortable living. Most parents think along these lines. How would the teacher view schooling? Regardless of shades of differences, most teachers tend to look upon school as an institutionalized information center to provide basic skills in acquiring knowledge in a time frame under the guidance and supervision of qualified personnel, leading to a certificate or degree as a proof of one's proficiency in a cluster of disciplines. This view appears more formalized, precise, and explicit. Advanced organizer. An analysis of the advanced organizer is detailed as follows. A conceptual analysis. Advanced organizer is a key concept formulated by Ausubel to explain how meaningful learning can be promoted. Meaningful learning is most likely to occur when there is a potential fit between the student's existing cognitive structure and the material to be learned. The use of an advanced organizer is meant to make this fit more likely. Advanced organizers are introductory ideas, maybe facts, concepts, examples, etc., of a rather general nature that are broad enough to encompass all the information that has to be learned. These are so called because they are given in advance with a view to help the learner organize all the information to be presented and received. New ideas are grasped and retained by the learner only if more inclusive and appropriately relevant concepts are already available in the cognitive structure to play a subsuming role or to provide ideational anchorage. The main purpose of advanced organizer is to integrate and interrelate the material in the learning task with previously learned material. Types of advanced organizer. Ausubel speaks of two types of advanced organizers, expository and comparative. Expository organizers. They provide a general model of class relationship as a general subsumer for a new class, subclasses and species before more limited subsumers, say for example classes, are provided for the particular subclass or species. In order to receive new knowledge, the existing cognitive structure should have the related broad concepts to which the new piece of information could be meaningfully linked. Comparative organizers. They are designed to integrate new concepts with basically similar concepts existing in the cognitive structure. For example, suppose a set of comparatively young children are to learn about Nelson Mandela as the creator of modern South Africa. Certain aspects about his life and work may be familiar, but the unfamiliarity with the environmental conditions may make meaningful learning difficult. This can be avoided by using the life and work of the father of our nation, Gandhiji, as the advanced organizer. The two are similar and comparable in many respects. Hence, meaningful reception of the new information will be easy by linking these with the very familiar ones about Gandhiji. However, care should be taken to discriminate between the two wherever salient differences exist. What is happening here is that Gandhiji's life and work can subsume and anchor the new material. Function served by advanced organizer. Following are the functions served by advanced organizer. 1. It reminds learners of things they already know, which will be relevant when they encounter the new material. 2. It directs attention to what is important and new in the upcoming material. 3. It highlights relationships among ideas that are presented and systematize the cognitive structure. 4. It facilitates learning and retention by referring to the fundamental concepts and principles learned in the previous lessons and relating them to the new material, by providing a kind of scaffolding for the new material by encompassing the areas to be covered under which the rest of the information can be subsumed, and helping learners to avoid the practice of resorting to rote learning. Progressive differentiation and integrative reconciliation. Ausubel mentions two important principles involved in meaningful verbal learning. These are progressive differentiation and integrative reconciliation. Progressive differentiation refers to the order in which information has to be presented to the learners for meaningful reception. The most general or broad idea of the area concerned is presented first, and then the more specific are presented in the hierarchical order in relation with the general. This hierarchy is decided by differentiating the attributes of the general concept one by one. Integrative reconciliation refers to the deliberate linking process of new ideas and information to the previously learned content. For example, in mathematics, there is a sequence of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Mastery of each one leads to the understanding of subsequent ones. If the student has any doubt at any step, it should be clarified and understood then and there. Otherwise, he would find later learning difficult. This is made possible by integrating every piece of new information with the existing cognitive structure. Here, the advanced organizer will serve the function of an anchor for firmly linking the information. This integration will help the learner reconcile with the newness of the experiences. GAGNE'S hierarchy of learning. Robert M. Gagne was one of those who had turned from the study of basic problems in the laboratory to the practical task during World War II, where he worked especially on various devices for simulating the task of the pilot. Gagne is especially known for his famous writings, The Conditions of Learning and Instructional Technology Foundations. Learning, according to Gagne, may be considered as a change in human disposition or capability which can be retained and which is not simply ascribable to the process of growth. The major task or objective of one's learning is to bring the required change in his way of disposition, a tendency to behave in certain ways in given situation, or the capability of performing one task or the other. The result or impact of learning may be subjected to proper measurement, since these can be properly observed and inferred by observing the difference in performance of the learner before and after learning. These changes in behavior or ability and potential of the learner are somewhat enduring, as the learner is capable of visiting and benefiting through the outcomes of such learning. In any case, this is an acquired tendency which cannot be simply associated with the process of natural growth, that is, malnutrition, etc. Gagne maintained that all learning are not alike, and consequently he divided human learning into 8 types of categories arranged in hierarchy. He gave them a hierarchical order based on their internal connections, since one type of learning provides a prerequisite for the next higher order learning. The 8 types of learning are described here. Signal learning. This is a classical conditioning form of learning. The learner recreates a conditioned response to a given stimulus or signal. In this, learning is attributable to classical conditioning. Fears of many kinds, such as fear of water or fear of fire, might develop during childhood. If these signals were followed by painful experiences, verbal and visual stimuli may become signals for a specific behavior. A number of repetitions of the paired stimuli must be used in order to establish a stable conditional response. Stimulus response learning. This is a trial and error form of learning and operant. The learning sequence is as follows. A signal is given. The learner gradually learns a signal response involving precise movements of the body. The learner receives some reward or reinforcement only when he makes the desired response. Chaining. Learning a behavior chain involves putting together previously learned stimulus response associations in a prescribed order. Gagne restricts this category to non-verbal sequence, even though verbal cues may be used initially in acquiring a motor chain. A number of motor skills are acquired through chain learning in the elementary school, like buttoning, using a pencil, writing, etc. The conditions that are necessary for chain learning to occur efficiently include: 1. The individual links in the chain must have been previously learned. 2. There must be contiguity of each link with the previous one. And 3. Practice is required in order to put together each stimulus response in the chain into its proper sequence. Verbal association. It involves the learning of verbal chains. For the verbal association to occur, previous learning must provide a link between stimulus and an associated response, and this link mediated between the discrimination of the stimulus and the emissions of the response. Images as well as previously learned verbal associations may be part of chain. Multiple discrimination. This is a stage of good discrimination, that is to learn making different responses to different stimuli. For example, a young child receives multiple discrimination learning while learning colors and shapes. To ensure retention, measures must be taken to make the stimuli as highly distinctive as possible so as to avoid confusion with previously learned association. Concept learning. While learning a concept, the learner's response to stimulus in terms of abstracted properties like color, shape, position, etc. are opposed to their concrete physical appearances. A child whose experience with cubes is very limited may attach the word cube to 2-inch wooden block that is painted yellow, which he has seen. The child can later attach the word cube to cubes made of different materials, of different sizes and of different colors. Rule learning. It is also known as principle learning. Principles are generated through the chaining of 2 armored concepts. For example, if one is thirsty, one needs water to drink. Problem solving. This is a process of combining previously learned principles into novel higher order principles to achieve some goals in the forms of arriving at a solution for a problematic situation. This requires certain internal events which are usually called thinking. Without knowledge of principles, problems cannot be solved. According to Gagne, problem solving is the highest level in the learning process. These hierarchical gradations of learning tasks highlight the need for essentially ensuring the existence of prerequisite to ensure smooth progress in the hierarchy. The sequential arrangement of hierarchy is diagrammatically represented here. Now, you can try to answer the questions given here. Explain BRUNER'S ideas on cognitive development. Discuss the role of teachers in discovery learning. Describe briefly Ausubel's theory of meaningful learning. What is advanced organizer? Explain. What are the two principles involved in meaningful verbal learning? What is meant by verbal association? Hope that you may go through the reference books for further reading. An Introduction to Psychology by N. L. Munn, Oxford Publications, New Delhi, in the year 1967. Groundwork of Educational Psychology by J. S. Rose, Georgie Harrap and Company, London, in the year 1951. The Psychology of Thinking by W. E. Winack, McGraw-Hill, New York, in the year 1994. Thank you for watching this program. We can meet again with another topic. Have a nice day.